I'm Anna Palmer, the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. Thrilled to be moderating a conversation on the AI impact following a multiple kind of deep dives that our newsroom has done in partnership with Google on kind of different sectors and areas that AI is impacting the conversation in Washington, but then across the globe as well. So we were originally supposed to have Representative Zach Nunn, the Republican from Iowa, join us this morning. Unfortunately, there has been a kind of a natural disaster in his district, a tornado, so he's back there doing what he needs to do on the ground. But thankfully, we are thrilled that Representative Erin Houchin, the Republican from Indiana, has come in his place. I want to thank Google, as always, for their partnership in making conversations like this possible. We are at AI Connect DC. For those of you on the live stream that aren't here, it's a pop-up place where they have all kinds of different activations where you can see how AI is impacting healthcare, how it's impacting sports, regenerative agriculture. I encourage those of you who are here in person to take a moment when the conversation is done and check out some of these activations. They're very cool. Representative Houchin is a member of the House Financial Services Committee and serves on a working group looking at the impact of AI on financial services and the housing industry. So really looking forward to going deep with her on those issues as well as news of the day, as always. Afterwards, I'm going to be joined by Mark Osakowitz, VP of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the US and Canada at Google. As always, you can find Punchbowl News on all social media platforms at Punchbowl News. We encourage you to share this on those platforms. And with that, I would like to welcome the Congresswoman to the stage, Congresswoman Erin Houchin. Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm going to have you sit right over here. All right. Well, thank you so much for filling in on short notice.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. We'll start kind of as we always do in these conversations with a few news of the day questions. You're speaking backstage. You're on the Financial Services Committee. The House had a very big vote on the crypto bill. Do you think this bill has a chance in the Senate? What's the role of Congress when it comes to digital assets?
Yeah, I think it certainly should have a chance in the Senate, as evidenced by the bipartisan support, the strong bipartisan support it had on the House floor yesterday. I was standing with Patrick McHenry as the vote was called, and Chairman of the Financial Services Committee, French Hill, who led the bill as the subcommittee chairman for digital assets. I serve on that committee, helped with the legislation, and it had strong bipartisan support. We commented that even Nancy Pelosi voted for the bill yesterday. So we were very pleased with having the support of 71 Democrats for that on the House floor. I think that should indicate that it is an important bill that should receive consideration and move through the Senate, and hopefully we'll get the president's support.
Had a little bit of a back and forth tussle with Mr. McGovern over some of his comments regarding former President Donald Trump and his case. Those remarks were then taken off the record. Talk about what happened and maybe set the record straight. I think you've had some frustration about how it's been reported.
Yeah, so some media outlets have been creative in their editing of his comments versus mine, and I did not ask for his words to be taken down until he crossed the line. I've debated with Mr. McGovern many times on the House floor on the rules debate. I serve on the Rules Committee, and he often gets right up to the line. He's the former chairman of the committee, so he knows where that is. He often gets right up to the line but doesn't cross it. Yesterday he crossed it. He engaged in what we call personalities. You can't make disparaging claims about presidential nominees, the president, senators, or members of Congress. Right. And he crossed that line yesterday. I did not ask for his words to be taken down when he was merely reading charges, and the media is reporting that he was only reading charges, and then I asked for that to be done. If that had been the case, the parliamentarian would not have approved my request or my ask for his words to be stricken from the record. So he did cross a line. I'm not going to repeat what he said. There may be children listening at home.
We'll leave that for the video clip to
repeat what he said, but he did cross a line, which is why I moved to strike his words.
All right, we at Punchbowl News pride ourselves on kind of covering the inside game of all things Washington leadership races as well as those committee races. Mr. McHenry stepping down from House Financial Services has opened up a spot on that committee, which you serve. There's French Hill, who you mentioned earlier, Bill Huizenga, Andy Barr, many members who are kind of potentially thinking about and are actively engaged in that race. Are you supporting anybody?
I'm not supporting anyone at this point, although, you know, I am in the steering committee district right now with Andy Barr, and Andy Barr would be a great chairman of financial services. But French Hill has been a good leader on digital assets, on the AI working group. At the same time, Bill Huizinga has been a leader too. So I think we have no bad choices in the mix for the financial services chair. If I'm not on the steering committee, I won't get a say in that. But I'm happy to have worked with all of those great leaders, and any of them would be a good choice.
Keeping your cards close to the vest. I appreciate that. You don't want to get out too in front too early. But what about Mike Johnson? If he wants to stay on as GOP leader next year, do you anticipate supporting him?
Yes, I do anticipate supporting him if he wants to stay. I think he's really done some miraculous work, particularly getting some of these bills across the floor that were must-dos. We often talk about how there's a Churchill moment and a Chamberlain moment, and you have to choose. And I think he very much chose the Churchill moment. And at his own risk, and that speaks a lot for his leadership. I think he's done a good job, and if he wants to stay, then I'd like to keep him there.
All right. Before we turn to the topic at hand, I can't not ask you about 2024. Steve Scalise told us yesterday that he thinks Republicans can get a double-digit majority in the House. Where are you on where Republicans will be in 2025? In the majority, and do you really think it could be that big of a number? That's kind of outside the range of what most people are predicting at this point.
You know, with certainly in my state, former President Trump is very popular. I think that will drive turnout in the red states. The blue states, the purple states, still trying to find our way, although polling is indicating in the swing states that Donald Trump is outperforming Joe Biden. I think we will do well. I think we will maintain the majority in the House of Representatives. I think we will grow it. To what extent, I think, is yet to be determined. But I do think we will keep and grow the majority next year.
All right. Well, we will have to see. We're a little less than 6 months, Jake reminded me on the podcast this morning, which is kind of hard to believe. We're already in the thick of campaigning. Let's talk about AI and AI impact. Punchbowl News spent the past couple of months doing deep dives on everything from healthcare to workforce development to cybersecurity, looking at kind of opportunities, what's happening with the legislative landscape. I want to talk about AI in the economy first, kind of at that 100,000-foot level. How do you think AI can help spur economic development?
Well, it certainly creates efficiencies, and we often talk in the AI working group about how when the advent of the internet came, people were afraid of that, and there's certainly things to be concerned about with AI, but as there were things to be concerned about with the advent of the internet. But what we found is that it fast-tracked human civilization, and it has very much made us all more efficient. I was telling my team, like, I don't know if this was Google. I think it might have been Google. So if it wasn't Google, then I'm not going to name the other player.
Yeah.
But there was a demonstration of some high school students who were debating, and they had a curtain between them. And on one side, the students had encyclopedias, and on the other side, they had access to the internet. And they were scored and earned points for how quickly they answered questions. And at the end, of course, the speed of the internet team vast outpaced. I mean, they crushed them, right? So these students were like, how did we lose so badly? And they removed the curtain, and they see that they had encyclopedias to get the answers, and the other teams had access to the internet. So it does make us more efficient. In AI, I think we're going to see the same thing. It can do great things. We're already seeing it do great things in the financial services sector, in education, in workforce development. I think it'll make us more efficient, which will be good for the economy, which is why you see other countries advancing in AI as well.
Yeah, let's drill down a little bit. You're a member of the Financial Services Committee and this AI working group. For those who maybe aren't as familiar with it, kind of how did it come about? What's the goal and the aim?
Yeah, so I think Patrick McHenry, in his infinite wisdom, hi Patrick, he made a couple of working groups. One was digital assets, and one is AI. We do have to get a handle on AI in the financial services sector because we've seen things like Operation Choke Point, debanking, discrimination. We don't want to have these things, and AI is very much what information you put into it can come out. So we do have to be careful about it, and so I credit him for having us take a look at this. What we found is that the regulators are behind the game, which is why I put forward the Futures Act. Let's have the regulators take a look at what technology they're using, what technology is available, how they can improve oversight over the systemic risk in our financial markets. So he asked French Hill if he would chair the group. I'm pleased to be part of it. It's been a pretty fascinating few months here as we're trying to find our way from a policy perspective on where those guardrails should be.
You've done some roundtables, I think. What would have been some of the topics that you're covering?
So we've had the regulators in to sort of talk about some of the pros and cons that they see. We have had some market participants come in and talk about how they're already using AI and some of the benefits of that and what pitfalls or concerns that they might have. How, particularly from the market participants, how we don't want regulation to stifle innovation in AI, and how there could be some push-pull in these use cases that are rapidly developing. And I'm just glad that we have an eye on it. We also have the overall AI working group in the House, and I know Senator Schumer and my colleague from Indiana, Todd Young, are working on it on the Senate side. I think that our goals are pretty aligned in terms of what we're looking for. So that's great.
Let's talk about the Senate has obviously brought in kind of industry leaders. They recently, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer put out his AI roadmap initiative. What's kind of been your reaction to what's been happening over there?
I'm glad to see it. I think that we have to be having these conversations, and it shouldn't just be in one house. I think I'm certainly glad that the Senate is taking a leadership role in this too. From what I've seen from the roadmap, it's very similar to some of the things that we're talking about on the House side, which gives me hope that we will find some common ground on both sides, between both parties. Our AI working group has 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats, and we do work together sometimes, despite the information that people might have. I tell people a lot of the things that we do are bipartisan because good policy supersedes politics. And we've passed, I think, we've certainly passed more than 300 bills out of the House of Representatives with 86% bipartisan support. So we can work together on some things. We should, just like with the crypto bill that we just passed. So it's encouraging.
Does it matter to you whether it moves first in the Senate or in the House?
No, it doesn't matter to me. I learned a long time ago, as long as a good thing gets done, it doesn't really matter who gets the credit. So that's certainly been my philosophy. We just have to do the work and get good policy.
So let's talk about workforce development and AI. Obviously, you alluded to the fact that there's a lot of, I think, nervousness sometimes around what does this mean for the future, and certainly there's opportunities of where there might be new jobs and upskilling opportunities. But what are you hearing from your constituents in Indiana?
One of the things that they're concerned about is just, what does this mean for our workforce? What does this mean for jobs? I think and we've seen this in innovation over time, there's always a little bit of concern among the workforce that this is going to put people out of jobs. What we find, though, is that we innovate and we create new opportunities in all of this. So I do think that we will be creating new opportunities. Although we're more efficient, those needs still exist. And I think we won't see, there's more reason to be afraid of AI for things like fraud, deep fakes, market manipulation, those kinds of things than I think we probably have from the workforce, but I understand the concern.
It was interesting. Mika Solner, who is one of our reporters, spoke with SBA Administrator Isabel Guzman for this project about kind of what does this look like for small businesses in particular, right? Big companies often can withstand or can lead when it comes to changes in technology. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is the SBA is really focused on making sure that AI reaches places like Indiana, and it's not just tech hubs like Silicon Valley, Boston, places like that. Is there an openness in kind of, among more rural state, or sometimes I'm from North Dakota, they could fly over country to get engaged on this?
By the way, if people are flying over Indiana or North Dakota, you should stop.
Yes, agreed. Full stop.
I think when we think about how Indiana feels, rural America feels. When I was a state legislator, there were parts of my state that did not have access to the internet. And so now we're talking about making sure that they all have access to the internet, but on top of that, we have AI. So when I was talking to our governor about the lack of internet access in my state, that has impacts in agriculture, in education, in small businesses, in entrepreneurship, and the AI is the same way. I think it can help small businesses compete with larger companies, and that's good for small town Indiana.
All right, we are almost out of time, but you mentioned kind of how Republicans and Democrats, this is probably going to be a bipartisan effort. Certainly so far, it has been. I mean, there's some differences in approach, but there is kind of the idea to work across the aisle. What is your sense of how government can work with the private sector, right? Because a lot of the innovation's coming from the private sector. There seems to be some concern that Congress will just kind of overregulate, kind of go have a heavy hand in it versus kind of letting, the experimentation phase continue.
I would say that's why the working group on our side exists. And I can't speak for the Senate side, but on our side, we want to engage with, and we have been engaging with those market participants and innovators, because we don't want the regulators who have less experience or Congress to sort of put in too many guardrails and stifle innovation in AI. So we are very much engaged with, and I think they do play a role because they're the ones that are using these technologies every day. We do have to have an eye for being concerned and protective over markets and market manipulation, fraud detection, discrimination, all of those things. But at the same time, the innovators are using this. They're finding the new ways and new use cases every single day. And if we put too many roadblocks in place, we will lose opportunities.
All right, we're going to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to welcome Mark Osakowitz to the stage for a fireside chat. Sir. All right, you're VP of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the U.S. and Canada at Google, so I feel like this is going to be a fun chat. This is right in your wheelhouse.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Of course. So first, for those, especially in the audience that are not in person, talk to us about AI Connect. What's the purpose? What are you all doing here?
Well, listen, there are so many opportunities for AI. You were just having a great conversation with the Congresswoman about it. We want people to be able to touch it and feel it. I have to say, when I came over here, things I've been talking about how AlphaFold is going to help us unlock proteins and do disease cures, and something over there on retina scans that are going to help prevent blindness, and something that's going to help in terms of crop yield. And people are going to be able to interrupt a YouTube video. Learners are going to be able to interrupt and ask for a quiz or a summary or something like that. So what we wanted to do is not just make this about economic statistics. The economic statistics are there. We already know McKinsey has said that they expect about $18 to $25 trillion of additional economic growth as a result of AI by the end of the decade. That's adding an entire U.S. economy to the global economy by the end of the decade. But those are big numbers, and the pace of change is quick. So we want to be able to let people come over here, and also not just do a show and tell of what AI is doing in science and learning, but show and tell and listen, to take the feedback of stakeholders, because we're trying to be bold and responsible, trying to do innovation and guardrails. And part of that is just an ongoing feedback loop of people of all political stripes and all backgrounds to tell us what they think of these products and maybe what they're worried about and what they're excited about.
It really gives you a tangible feeling, though, of like we have had so many conversations about this, but in some of the activations, I encourage you all to go look at and kind of experience, because it puts a much more kind of fine point on what the opportunity is.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we've really had a good week in this space, and it's exciting, and it's very much related to the next steps of this, which is we have to get the workforce prepared. We have to get, whether it's government agencies or private industry, adopting some of these technologies, And a lot of work needs to go into this to be able to take advantage of the opportunities.
So let's talk about workforce development and AI. I was talking with the Congresswoman a lot about Indiana and her state, the idea of upskilling the workforce, that there's concern about, the economy's changing. What is Google doing when it comes to the investment in making sure with all of this change, there's going to be a lot of new jobs and new skills that are needed?
So part of the AI opportunity agenda is, of course, infrastructure. In Indiana, I really enjoyed listening to Congresswoman Houchin talk about how she's embracing this. We just announced a data center in Fort Wayne, which is close to her district. A different data center is going to be in her district. Once data centers come to an area, it tends to expand. We're growing more outside of the Bay Area than inside of the Bay Area, so we want everyone to be a stakeholder. But on the workforce stuff, we want people to start having the skills for the jobs of the future. So a few weeks ago at our data center, at one of our offices in Virginia, we announced something called AI Essentials. It's a course you can complete on Coursera for $49. It takes less than 10 hours. You get a certificate at the end of it. It's some everyday uses of AI. Maybe it'll help you summarize your inbox. I'm sure, Anna, you have no problem with managing your inbox.
Tens of thousands. I'm not an inbox zero person.
Maybe you're running a small business and you need some marketing help. You want the AI to help you come up with a marketing campaign. So AI Essentials will help people do that. So that's an individual thing that people can do. But then also our philanthropy created a $75 million AI opportunity fund. So we can do that at a little bigger scale for military families and in rural areas and for underrepresented groups. We just did this. One of our first partners was Goodwill, to be able to be with bigger groups of people, to give them the AI Essentials course for free, but then also offer some wraparound services like maybe resume building with your new AI skills, maybe some counseling on your job search. So we need to do that. And by the way, this needs to be done at a larger scale, and we will keep pushing. We will keep doing our part. I understand just today, Senators Cantwell and Moran are going to be introducing something that we have been talking about for a while. Senator Cantwell talked about having a GI bill for AI, and so they're introducing a bill today that has some fellowships and scholarships for AI skilling, and we feel very positively about that. We want to embrace that sort of agenda, and I think that's a good place to start on the opportunity side of AI.
Google is obviously a global company, but we are right here in Washington, and there's been a lot of conversations really about kind of education of members of Congress and kind of the interaction between the private sector and the public sector. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer recently released his AI framework. We talked with the Congressman about that. What was your initial reaction to that?
Our initial reaction was very positive. We were engaged heavily on it. Listen, this goes back a ways for us, Anna, as I think you know. We did our own AI principles several years ago about socially beneficial uses of AI. Then when in the fourth quarter of 2022, when kind of the ChatGPT and Bard for us, now Gemini era started, the White House called on us to sign on to the voluntary commitments that had to do with safety and security and reliability and trust. We signed on to that. We gave input on the executive order. Then Senator Schumer, Rounds, Heinrich, and Young started these forum. Our CEO came to the first one. So we've been very much engaged in the process. We generally felt good about what they put out. I know some people thought it wasn't ambitious enough, but I must say, as a former Senate Chief of Staff, I like the style of the Schumer report, that it endorsed several things that are getting momentum on consensus, and it referred some other things, some of the harder things to the committee that'll take some time. And if you look at the Congress over the last few years, they've had some success building from the bipartisan middle out and getting things done. And then as people learn and get deeper into the issues, maybe we'll get some other things done too. So we feel good about it. And there are several pieces of legislation that the report mentioned that we are actually ready to support that would put us on a good path.
So let's talk about that. Any news we can make about where Google is today on some of those pieces or parts?
So we have not said this. We have not said this publicly. So maybe it does make a little news, but it does mention 5 bills. I brought a little cheat sheet to make sure I wouldn't forget any of them. But Senators Cantwell and Young have something that's authority for both NIST and the AI Safety Institute, that we think that's a good place for it to be regulated. Senator Booker and others have a Grand Challenges Act that we think is reminiscent of DARPA and the X Prize on some of the key AI issues. Senators Peters and others and Young have a Workforce Data Act so we can analyze these changes in the workforce. Create AI Act, it creates a national AI research resource that'll help small businesses and researchers access the compute they need. And then there's a Small Business Technology Advancement Act, which will, the very popular SBA 7A loan program, sort of expanded so small businesses can learn about AI. So listen, I know some of these bills people won't think are the most exciting thing, but it's a good place to start. It leans in on, again, on innovation and guardrails. We have to do both. It kind of leans in on the innovation side. I loved how the Congresswoman talked about it before I came up here. We need to keep the U.S. in the lead. There's no accident that some of the greatest technology companies are here. It's part of the crown jewels of the United States. We can be very proud of it. This is going to really empower people in terms of knowledge, in terms of medical cures, in terms of having a learning tutor in your pocket. And we want to lean into it, and we want to do all the things in terms of guardrails and safety as we go. And we appreciate the bipartisan group of senators, kind of, again, starting from the bipartisan middle out. And by the way, in the House task force on AI, which the Congresswoman is on, has also been equally engaging. Some of these bills have been introduced in the House too, and we really appreciate the engagement there. And the Senate made some news because they put this report out, but in both houses we have found this to be rewarding on a bipartisan basis.
I want to finish on this note. So this is, for the reporters in the room, there was some news there. Google supporting specific pieces on when it comes to AI regulation. But talk about how important it is. We ended this with the Congressman as well, about kind of that public-private partnership. You know, you all are kind of leading in the industry. I think there's been some fear that because Congress has been slow to regulate on other issues in tech, that they might kind of have a heavy hand here. What do you think? What's your message to the Hill?
Well, I think we as a company have been trying to telegraph from the beginning that AI is too important not to regulate and too important not to regulate well. You can only do that with a lot of input, a lot of public-private cooperation, not just us, civil society, anybody who wants to have a view on this. The only way this works is if this is in keeping with our mission to make these tools, make these knowledge tools available for everybody. If it's just perceived as when, you know, if you think about in the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution came along. In the 20th century, electrification and cars came along. These are general purpose technologies that, by general purpose, it cuts across the entire economy, everybody's way of life. And the way to embrace it and to make the best of it is to make it a victory for everyone, an opportunity for everyone. And the only way to do that is to have a lot of public-private dialogue, again, with companies, yes, with civil society, and over time we'll work these things out. And it can only be done through a public-private partnership. There's really no other way.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Mark, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Thanks. A big thank you to Google, as always, for partnering with us, and the Congressman for filling in on short notice. Please, everybody, stick around and check out all of the different activations. Have a great day and stay safe.